Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's session, which is part of our Art of the Possible webinar series. My name's Chris Anthony. I'm a previous webinar veteran, but today I'm hosting, and it's Asanka that's going to be delivering a very useful webinar that covers servitisation, supporting external engineers, which is all about using IFS to support your workforce in the field. Before we begin, I'll just run through some basic protocols about the webinar. So the webinar is going to include some interactivity in terms of poll questions, and we'd like to get some feedback from everyone. I'll let you know when this is happening. Microphones will be on mute for the duration of the webinar. If you would like to refer to the presentation in any way after the event, then we will have PDF copies and recordings available. And if you'd like to access any of those, then please get in touch. There's a questions box at the right-hand side in GoToMeeting for you to raise anything with us. This is available throughout the session, so if you do have any questions, just type your questions into those boxes, and we'll review those right at the very end of the presentation. There is going to be a little delay from you entering the question to us being able to see it, so if you do have anything to ask, please enter it nice and early for us. That'd be great. And finally, this is a part of a wider series of webinars with more to follow, and all past webinars are still available as recordings, which you can see on our website at cedarBay.com. Look out for the info hub there. So here's today's agenda. Asanka is going to be showing us some great stuff around the service management overview, looking at object management and preventive maintenance, and then how to process work orders. And before we start, before we let Asanka go, we're going to have our first poll question, and that is the question for you guys is, how are you going to be using service management in IFS? So are you going to be using it to manage the services that are provided for customers? Are you using it to manage internal equipment? Are you going to be using it to manage internal equipment and service providing, or not using IFS service management at all? So if you could give me some feedback on that, that'd be great. I'll just give you a minute to register your answers. Okay, so so we can see there's a fairly even split across using the equipment management and for service providing, and also for people who are not intending to use IFS for service management at all. So thanks for that. It's about 50-50. Okay, so I shall hand you now over to Asanka.
Okay, thank you, Chris. We are going to first look at an overview of service management offering in IFS. To start off, we have service contracts, which controls what you offer to your customers. It has service level agreements, pricing of services, details on how invoicing is handled, and maintenance plans. The SLAs keep how you would do the work to resolve the issues reported by your customer. It will have prioritization information, response times, you have agreed with the customer, resolution times, etc. It will also hold pricing information. If you would charge a fixed price, or you would be charging according to what you use for the work, or whether it'll be free of charge, that information would be also saved in the service contract. And then in contract invoicing, you would have how often the invoices are created. This will work together with the contract pricing, and that will give you how much you would charge from your customers annually, quarterly, monthly, if you're using periodical invoicing. And you can also handle preventive maintenance, plan the preventive maintenance using the service contract. Then we have the equipment object management. What we will be maintaining and servicing are kept as objects in IFS. My focus today is on serviceable objects for customers and service providing, but IFS can be used to manage both external and internal invoicing, servicing. The objects can be facilities or equipments that we service for a price for our customers, and also can be our own production facility or a plant that we have registered as an object to make sure that timely checkups are carried on, proper protocols are followed when servicing or inspecting, etc. And we will look into object management in more details later in the presentation. Then we have the IFS preventive maintenance offering, what we would be covering today. This will work together with maintenance plans as well. And of course, the fault-driven maintenance in IFS, which is handled using the work order functionality. Actually, preventive maintenance also relies on work order functionality. It's our execution object for resource and material management, and for invoicing and analysis, we use work orders in preventive maintenance as well. And then the FSM solution, which helps you to allocate the correct resource to do the job and what is the best possible time to do the job. It also allows remote handling of services. Your field staff can flag issues, get help using the embedded collaboration tools from other staff. They can access documentation, attach images, digitally sign the work, and finally report the work they have done. There are a few other modules that completes the service management solution, like service quotes. If before getting the service, your customer calls for quotations, that is handled with this functionality. You can prepare several work objects together. You can analyze the cost, the revenue, and the margins that you would have with this work. It's also possible to handle the emergent work with the percentage allowance, etc. And we also have linear asset management, vehicle information management, complex MRO, B2B handling, etc. So now that we had a quick overview on service management solution, let's look at equipment objects. Let's say you are caretaking facilities as a service. You can define those factories, the processes like manufacturing, packing, maybe product design, different functions in those processes, the machines that you use, like your CNC machines, fuel systems, and components of those machines, all as equipments in IFS. So there's no strict definition as to what can become an object. And after that, you can establish their object levels, and this will place them in a hierarchy, like in this navigator. So when a component is to be serviced, like this sludge chamber here, you would know exactly which function in the manufacturing is affected in his separation. So you can plan in advance for the outage. And likewise, if you have all the levels defined in your facility up to the last valve and bolt, let's say, and if a supplier who has provided a certain valve is recalling it, you can exactly locate it in the facility, and also would know where the effect would be. And if you do not wish to have such complex handling, you can still use the object management functionality and handle your objects independently using IFS. Then the serviceable objects can be serial objects or functional objects. Objects that must be mobile within the facility, like a generator that you move between objects or between sites, or items you put in your repair workshop and then transfer to the inventory. Those should be established as serial objects. So they will have a part number and a serial number. And as you are expecting it to be moved, it will have comprehensive history tracking as well. Serial objects can be created as an outcome of another process in IFS. such as delivering a battery pack you have manufactured to a customer via a customer order, that can create a serial object automatically. So likewise you can use project delivery and also asset design to create serial objects. Then we have functional objects. These can be a building, a department, room, subsystem, or just your customer. Even the customer can be defined as a functional object. So using functional objects, you can describe your facility in geographical terms and also physical terms, like what you would find in each plant or in each room, or in functional terms, like your whole production line can be mapped using functional and serial objects. Against those both serial and functional objects, you can store a multitude of information. I have some examples here. Firstly, the object levels to facilitate the hierarchical object management I spoke earlier. Then you can define test points and take measurements against those test points, such as pressure, temperature, or for a production machine, number of items produced. That can later be used to trigger preventive maintenance plans. For example, after every 1,000 items produced, you can send a technician for servicing, or if you are talking about servicing a vehicle, a truck, after running a certain number of miles, you can schedule a service. Then you also have warranty details for the piece of equipment, warranty that you have got from the supplier, and also the warranty you're offering to your customers. You can also attach technical data to the equipment using technical class and attributes. Apart from that, you can use the standard document management functionality, which is something available throughout IFS application, to attach additional documentation such as CAD documents, specs, blueprints, user manuals, etc. Continuing on object details, you can define how critical an object is for a process, or how crucial for your customers to have the object operational throughout, such as if it's a primary power source for your plant, it's very critical to have that operational throughout. Then choice of categorizing your objects using categories, groups, classes, especially useful when you are doing analysis. And then using object types, you can manage several different structures in parallel. Like you can have electrical structures, instrumentation structures, process structures, etc. Then you have the maintenance history preserved according to the work carried out on objects. You can see all incident-based and preventive work done on certain objects that you have sold to customers. So for example, let's say if a certain object that is sold to the customer has more failures reported, you can see that in the object, and maybe you can revisit your preventive maintenance plan to tackle that situation. All costs involving maintenance are stored against the objects when parts are used for maintenance, or when technicians report time for the work they have done. All that is stored in against the object, so you can see the cost of maintaining each object throughout its life. Finally, you have spare part recommendations. Items that should be kept in hand are also registered against objects. This is how you would see the object navigator in IFS Arena client. I have opened my production facility. You can observe the object navigator similar to the image in my earlier slide over here. And for each object, you have an overview to the right, which shows the objects this facility consists of, immediate, lower, and in all levels below, and any ongoing or past work information for the object, and maintenance plan and service lines. For each of these, I can see more information using the tabs provided. And above the navigator, you can see the relationship between the objects. I have functional relationship here. Depending on your requirement, you can look into different object structures like electrical structures, pipe systems. You can define these relationships between the objects in the object itself. When you navigate to an object, I have chosen a functional object here. You can see the information such as the location, operational status, and some categorization here. The operational status of an equipment object is the status of the object in its life cycle. So when you enter a new object, the system will set it into in operation. The other statuses are planned for operation. That is when a serial object has been transferred from project delivery or asset design and has not yet been set to in operation, it will have planned for operation. You have out of operation, the object is temporarily out of use for routine maintenance, repair due to management decision or lack of the need. And finally scrapped, which means it's permanently out of use. And apart from the operational status, for serial objects, you would also find a current position. This can be under design, under transportation, inventory, issued, in workshop, or scrapped. Other object information would be presented as tabs for you, or available via buttons. So a quick outlook here informs you which of these tabs or screens accessed via buttons would be useful for you, such as this object has spare parts, warranty document, test points attached, but you will not find anything in technical requirements tab. So throughout the forms I'm showing you today, you would find these indicators. Now that we had a look at objects, let's look at how preventive maintenance is handled in IFS. Now this is the standard workflow. Your approach for this functionality depends on the type of service you are providing. If you have a variety of objects which has recurring maintenance tasks carried on them, you can start from work task templates. For frequent tasks, you create templates and then you can group these tasks together to define PM programs. PM programs can be connected to groups of objects or individuals, and these programs can then be defined to generate PM actions. Now, PM actions are actually a template for creating a maintenance order, the work order in IFS. So they carry information on when the future maintenance is to be expected on the object, and all other information that you have defined for task templates are carried down via PM program. Now, if the maintenance actions you carry out on your objects are not frequent or they differ greatly depending on the objects you are servicing, you can opt to leave the data setup for task templates and PM programs behind and start by manually creating PM programs, PM actions. Depending on the PM criteria you have chosen, we have based on calendar connected to a specific event, or depending on conditions of the equipment, you can then generate work orders to carry out the maintenance. Now we will look into each of these steps in details, starting off with work task templates. So they are used to for recurring types of work. For example, visual inspection carried out on a piece of equipment for leakage and corrosion checks, for measuring temperature or vibration. So if a task is uniform across many objects, you can reuse these task templates as well. So it explains how a specific type of job is to be performed. It can be in the form of a very short job description, or could be with a comprehensive work list with a lot more information, such as if an equipment is to be out of operation at the time of carrying out the work, or if there is a sequence of work steps to be performed. You can describe these steps in detail and attach technical documents to help your field staff. So if you are using the work list to explain work, you can also define the resources needed for this piece of work. Human resources like technicians, engineers with specific qualifications they should have. So only a certain employees of a certain resource group can do the job, and also what tools or equipment needed to be used to perform this job. And if the task would consume some material, those can also be stored in the templates itself, like safety equipment, new parts to replace the old, likewise. If the equipment needs to be isolated prior to this type of maintenance work, such as it should be disconnected from the power, and after servicing it should be re-established. Like if it's a chamber that you should evacuate before starting machines, those kind of things you can achieve using isolation and permits in IFS. This is to make sure the safety of your equipment as well as the personnel involved. And the task templates, they are not connected to sites, so they can be used across all or many of your sites. And you could also modify and add more details when you adapt them at site level. So if you're not familiar with the IFSS company and site concept, financial organizations are registered as companies in IFS. And these companies can have sites which are really geographical locations that they operate from. So let's look at my work task template in IFS. You have a brief description here and creation details and categorization. And like before, you have the indicators here. As you can see, for the same template ID, I have a few templates but with different statuses. Status obsolete. This is because it's possible to manage the life cycle of the template via revisions. You can attach administrators to these templates and control who can change these central objects, and also see who has done the changes and what are the changes occurred since you started using these templates. You can categorize the task templates using different criteria in the Prepare tab. I have used item classes and object types here. This means that the task is applicable for fuel systems and separators, and also for sampling components. So when an item class in the task template matches the PM program, you can add the task template to the program. We'll look into it later. And in the work list tab, you can see that my template has several work lists, and each work list has a number of work steps. So these work list items would become work tasks in the work order object. So when I create my work order, I will have 3 tasks, and to complete a single task, for example, for this sediment collection, I need to perform these 2 steps. In resources, I have human and tool resource requirements. These are defined at a group level. So an engineer from this group is required to spend half an hour, divided by multiplying this by planned quantity, to complete this job, and he should be using this maintenance kit here. So for human resources, it's also possible to add competencies and also certificates. This means to be qualified to do the job, not only the person should be in this resource group, but should also have the competencies at the appropriate level, and the certificates, if that is also defined. So this information is something that is defined at the human resource component of IFS that is reused at work order functionality. And then in materials, only material required for my task is safety equipment. But if you require replacement parts or any additional services or parts provided by an external party, you can have them here along with the conditions and ownerships. And finally, a summary of resources and materials would be available for you in the planning tab. Then how to adapt this information at the site level is defined in the Valid for Sites tab. So if you look at the resource adaptation for Valid for Sites tab, in here you can see now I can pinpoint to the individual from the group I have selected, and you can also define the sales parts to be used in the invoicing and the sales price. Likewise, you can have additional information also for materials. And after you modify the information, you can use this validate site option here. So the system would check if the connected site has the resource groups connected, or if there is incompatibility with the parts, etc. Luckily for me, the validation was okay. If there are some issues, the error description would explain it so that you can fix it. Now let's see how these task templates are attached to the objects using the PM program. So this is my PM program. Just like the work task templates, PM programs are managed via revisions. And I have the process class and item class combination here. Work task templates applicable for the item classes I have entered can be attached to the PM program using the Work Task Templates tab. And the objects with the same process class and the item class combination can be seen over here. So now the user has the option of seeing all such objects, objects without a PM program or objects with other programs. I have chosen I am looking into the objects that are connected to this PM program. Just like the disconnect PM program option here, if the object is not connected to this PM program, you will have the connect option. So when you use that button, you will be given a choice to create the PM actions via background job or online. Now I mentioned the PM action is really a template for creating work orders with all basic information entered at the task template level. So in the task template level, we had the work list, sites, safety information, resources, triggers, documents, material, all that. When you decide to use the PM program for PM action generation, would be going into the PM action. In addition to that, we will also have information about the object and also have a maintenance plan. Next steps for us would be PM generation. It would create work orders, including work tasks. So if you look at the PM action in IFS, you will see the revision control and indicators as usual. You will see customer information and also grouping details. So by using group and merge functionality, you can create one work order for several PM actions depending on the criteria you define. So such as one work order for all work carried out on a certain object, or one work order for all work carried out by a certain maintenance organization. Likewise, you can group PM actions together for one work order. There are several options when it comes to maintenance triggers in PM actions. We have the calendar-based triggers. You can set up to generate a work order every month or once in every quarter, and you can define a horizon. Until next year, you want to create a maintenance plan with the work order on every month. Likewise, you can use the calendar-based generation. Then over here you have the event triggers. For example, if you want to maintain certain objects only when there is a total facility shutdown, let's say, you can define an event for a shutdown and attach it to the PM action. And when the shutdown actually takes place, like in the year end or during the holiday season, you can declare the shutdown using the system, and that would generate work orders. And we are looking at the condition-based work order generation in this example. I'm monitoring the temperature. I have my min and max values here. I'm expecting to have my object between 30 and 40 Celsius since unusual temperature for this object I have connected indicates a issue that requires servicing. And in my object, I'm taking measurements for temperature using a meter. You can see the test point details here and the meter information here. And the measurements I have taken in the past, latest was 28. I have 33, 42, 34, etc. And when the condition-based work order generation is executed, that is done for the site and maintenance organization combination, this would generate a new work order. That is if the meter reading was not within the acceptable temperatures. In this example, that was the case. I had the meter reading 28 Celsius and the value expected was between 30 and 40 Celsius, so a new work order was generated for me. You can see the generation value of 28. I have an earlier work order generated when the temperature reading was 42, but nothing was created for 33 or 34. Now let's look at the work order that was created. So you can access the work order straight away from the maintenance plan. It will inherit the data at previous levels, but this is the object that we use for execution of work. You have the overview of work over here and outlook indicators there. Work order is shared among the preventive maintenance and incident-based maintenance, as I explained earlier. So you'll be notified which type of work is this. If it's a repair, you will have this as yes. And then you would also have fault information here. What was the symptom of the fault and who discovered it, etc. Then you will have work tasks that corresponds to the work list of our task template. It's possible to amend this information in the work order before you start your work. Additional information is again given to you as tabs and also as buttons. Especially you need the customer information defined. It says when you create invoices against whom you would raise those invoices. Then you'll also find service contract information, service level agreement details, and also warranty information in customer information tab. You can drill down to the work tasks, which has more details on work to be carried out, including expected time frame to have the task completed. These would be updated with actual values when you start the work. You can revise and amend information for work steps, materials, allocate work to individual technicians if you have not already done so. Define how much work, how much you would charge for each material, and service work by updating sales information. And once you're happy with the work, you can give a go ahead by releasing the work task. Now, if the work order had a permit attached to it with an isolation order, you will not be able to start the work until you have finished your establishment. This is because IFS is using permits and isolation orders to make sure technicians involved work in a safe environment and the equipment affected are not damaged during the service. So in, let's say, in certain area in your facility, or a single object needs to be cleared or isolated before maintenance can start, you can use isolation orders. They have establishments like disconnecting electricity, stopping the flow of liquid to the equipment if applicable, or even informing someone. So before work begins, you have to do that, and after you finish the work, before you put back the object into operation, you have to do the re-establishment. So isolation orders work with permits. Permits are certificates indicating a certain type of work can be started. They're time limited. They can keep several isolation orders together and attach that to a work. They ensure that certain regulations and instructions are followed, or if there is a managerial level approval required or even higher level, you can get that using the permits to have the work started. There can be many different types of permits as well. Permits to carry out work, permits to enter a premise, special permits for high power electricity work, etc. So here is a small example. Here is where my separator is situated. Flow to and from it is controlled by valves. Before any work in the machine starts, I need to stop the liquid flow to it, and just shutting the separator off is not enough for me. So in this case, my steps shown here, stopping the separator, closing V1 and V4, draining using the V5, these are my establishment. And after service work is done, my re-establishment would be closing the V5, opening the V1 and V4, and switching on the machine. Now, if the technician allocated for the task is a mobile user and using mobile work order solution in IFS, you can transfer the task to mobile. So this will allocate the work assignment, and the mobile user would carry out maintenance using the MWO solution. So there would be workflows that controls what your technicians workers can do. Their activities like en route or start work would automatically report time either for work or travel, and they will have map support. They will have work pools where they can pick work from and complete the maintenance. They can complete the maintenance remotely. Once the allocated resource started the work, he can look into the work steps for additional information on how to carry out the jobs. They can access the manuals, blueprints, extra instructions attached to the object using object management. And when each step is completed, they can mark the work as done. The time they are spending for the work can be reported in the resources tab using the report time option here. And in time reporting, the technician can enter additional comments, especially when there are deviations from the expected duration. So you can recall that it was half an hour for us, and the technician reports 1 hour, and then they can add an additional comment. And during the inspection, if the technician finds a need to add additional tools or equipment, or even get support from staff that was originally not allocated for this task, they can add them at the time of time reporting and submit. So this will create a cost line in the work task. Like resource reporting, you can, if work requires material to be used on the work or used for the work, you can reserve and issue them using the work task, and those two would create a work cost, like in here. Or if material or service is to be purchased from a supplier, you can create a requisition from the work task, and then you can process it using the standard purchase order functionality. Let's say that the service required was additional cleaning, and the customer has done it on behalf of us. So we can register the customer as a supplier, and the customer can bill the cost of cleaning from us using that purchase order functionality. So I have explained a small example of such a scenario here. Now, if the setup is done to charge the technician time and material from the customer using sales parts, you can see that information in the sales tab. So you can see here that the cleaning service that I was mentioning earlier is not a invoiceable item for me. And I can amend details here. And once the task is completed, the task is now ready to be reported. And after that, can be forwarded for invoicing. So using the work reporting conclude option, you will generate a invoice preview to see what is going to be charged from the customers. It's possible to amend the details here, like the discounts and the prices. And once you have confirmed everything is as expected and you're happy with them, you can create a custom order for these details. And that custom order is used for invoicing. Now the customer order, even though it's using the customer order handling function in IFS, it doesn't need the standard reserve, peak, and delivery functions of items, because really nothing is expected to be delivered to the customer, and we are using this object just for the purpose of invoicing. So if you want to do any amendments, you can't do it on the customer order. You have to do it at the service level, at the invoice preview or at service reporting. So after invoicing is done, you can set the work task and the work order as finished. And this will move the work order to historical items. You can see the historical work carried out directly on the equipment object. We looked into it earlier as well. So you can see work task information and also work order information in the equipment object. As I mentioned before, object management cost per year is maintained in IFS, looking into the reporting you have done for material, external services, personal costs, etc. So you can analyze the cost of maintaining the part per year, and it will be maintained throughout its life. So you can see the breakdown over here. You have a choice of analysis tools as well. Now you can look in to a bar chart or a pie chart or any other form of visualization as you wish. That's basically what I hope to cover today. Just to recap on what we looked at, we looked into service management in IFS in brief. I explained how internal and external objects are managed in IFS with what information you can store. We looked into the preventive maintenance workflow. We looked at work task templates, PM programs, PM actions, and automatic work order generation. And finally, we had a quick look at how work orders are processed in IFS for invoicing the customers.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you very much, Asanka, for that. It was a very detailed look at the maintenance functionality, and I hope everybody found that useful. So I think we now got another poll question for you. So you've seen the potential of using IFS service management now. Can you see this being used in your company? So you've got definitely yes, it can be used for our business. Possibly there's some potential for it. You still need to learn more, or you definitely aren't going to be using it. So again, I'll give you a minute or so to register your responses. Okay, so yeah, so we got some coming in again, or definitely not using. So thank you for responses there. And that just about wraps the session up. So remember, if you need to access a recording of this webinar, please get in touch with us. We'll make that available for you. And also check out the other webinars in the Art of the Possible series. And these cover other subjects, including the Arena interface, CRM, inventory, and projects. And our next webinar in the series covers HR on the 9th of June, and that's with Rachel. Hopefully we'll see you then. And that's it for now. Please get in touch for anything else you need supporting your IFS journey. Thank you for attending, and we'll see you next time.